All right, welcome to Catalyst Circle version 8 for the CCv3. Let's kick this off with a quick check-in with everybody. We'll start with Mercy and then go to Joey. How are you all doing?
I'm good. Good to be here and power through things. Yeah, looking forward to this meeting. Thanks.
Thanks, Joey, and then Quasar.
Same here, all good in Philadelphia. Glad to see my Philly girls here too today.
Nice, Quasar, and then Nadia.
Hi, everybody. I apologize for being late. I couldn't get my sound going, and I've got new glasses, so I can't really see what I'm doing so well, but happy to be here.
Thanks, Quasar.
And if I look really weird, forgive me, because I really can't. I don't know how to use contacts and glasses.
Yeah, vision can be tricky once you start changing up what you're doing with it.
Wow. And, you know, getting older.
Yeah. Nadia, and then we have Steve here, so we'll get a little bit from him too.
All right, I'm great. It's raining in Philadelphia. Joey left that part out, but probably doesn't want to ruin our rep here, but it's pretty scary. But yeah, it's good. I'm here. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Steve, and then Harris.
Yeah, I'm good. Appreciate Mercy inviting me. Appreciate y'all allowing me. So it's nice to be here.
Thanks, Steve. And Reese sends his regrets. He has an emergency and can't attend. So we'll move to Harris and then Felix.
Hey folks, yeah, I'm definitely here wanting to sort of help track sort of how we're doing, contribute where I can. I know definitely just getting over COVID myself. I'm hoping I can test out and be normal with the world again. I tried to protect my family, but unfortunately they all got COVID as well. So we're in it together, but yeah, just very busy, but happy to be here with all of you.
Thanks, Harris. Felix and then Chris.
Yeah, but feel very swamped by beer market because whole community is just building as wild and you what the fuck. So yeah, but really happy to be here with you.
Chris and then JP.
Hi everybody, I'm good. I think I've managed to turn over COVID in record time. Diagnosed last Friday, felt amazing by Friday afternoon. Super excited to see Charles testifying in Senate today. Don't know if anybody's caught it. If you haven't, you should. So yeah, great to see our figurehead and thought leader taking forward the industry.
Beautiful. All right, JP, how are things going?
Yep. Hey everyone, thanks. Happy to be here. Feeling pretty excited and inspired after watching the after town hall and the town hall that went on yesterday. I think there's some really exciting developments in community governance and real position for this group to be leaders. And so I'm just really excited to be here to support you guys and to discuss the topics today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, JP. I'm also super excited with all the stuff that's happening out in the community. It's really great to see so much passion and great ideas coming together and being driven by the community and really having some great conversations happening. So I'm super excited to see how that goes as well. And let's move through the agenda. We've done our check-in. We have a short section here for any announcements. These are really quick things of anything coming up in the next week or two, or things that people should be aware of. So I'll open the floor to anything that people might have for that.
Definitely coming back to yesterday's town hall, what was mentioned by Jonathan already, as Catalyst GPS was presented. It's a funded proposal from Van by Nadia, Tommy, and no one knows how to announce the name of the third one. Nadia, you know.
Is it Andra?
Okay. And Andra.
Well, it was a bummer that he wasn't there because he is such a very calm and thoughtful presence, which is a good balance for me and Tommy. Yeah.
All right, thanks. Any other announcements? If not, all right. Oh, go ahead, Felix.
Would love to hear from Kesa, because yesterday, Kesa, you hosted a room as well for the circle. What was it? Because I think this was also a great discussion going on there.
But y'all forgive me. I don't. I can't. I don't know. I can hear you. I don't know which to look at. So I had a little breakout circle for ADAO. It was so ADAO was doing a proof of community week, and you know, I've been asking them to involved in the swarm, the after town halls. I'd love to see if they'd move their general meeting to a, you know, swarm after town hall, because selfishly, I have a lot going on Wednesday. And it'd be great if we could just do that at the space, but you know, looking to get them more involved in the community. And you know, the circle itself is kind of like a working group in ADAO. So there's a lot of similarities and everything. So it was really just talking about ADAO, Catalyst, the proof of community. You know, where does proof of community come into Catalyst Circle? How does ADAO do proof of community without doing Catalyst? And yesterday was Catalyst Day for ADAO. So, you know, we had a good conversation, a good little breakout. Kendrick stopped by. You know, they're passionate people. I'll leave it at that. But that's what it was. It was really no hardcore topic, but other than just general proof of community.
Great. Love the passion. Was there a recording of the meeting?
There is. I have it on Twitter Space. I only have like the last half of it on Zoom. So you all, I apologize. I will be able to get full recordings moving forward on both the Space and the Zoom.
All right. Excellent.
Yeah, I had this eye appointment yesterday, so I was running behind. I didn't realize I would not be able to see anything up front close. So yeah, it was a struggle yesterday, but we made it through.
All right. So next section, we're going to do agenda alignment and expectations. So currently the consent agenda has several topics. We're going to start with funded proposal, subcircle formation, and funding clarification from Mercy. And then CCv4 election planning updates and next steps. We have a creation of Polis wiki surveys, and then some discussions around the Fund 9 proposals for the circle. And then the topic of opening up the circle meetings. Is there anything else we want to add? Is this the right order? Or is anybody opposed to this order?
That Nadia was going to add something.
Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
think I was going to be after Mercy there, right before the election planning stuff. So if you just stick me a little 2-minute spot in there, that's good.
Okay.
Am I?
Sorry, go ahead, Quasar. Did you want to add something to the agenda or change the order? You're muted, by the way.
Let me come back to it. I wanted to, yes, I want to say something. I don't want to change anything to the agenda, but I want to address something that's on the conversation. So let me get where I can read it.
All right. So then let's get started. In our last meeting, we talked about refocusing the circle around the V4 election planning, and not to use the GitHub board. until Circle V4. Is that still kind of the consensus? And should we just move straight into the agenda and the election planning and any other related updates? I just want to make sure that we're still aligned on that.
I mean, getting the election right, but what is the makeup of the circle? You know, what else can we work on to, you know, bring clarity to what the circle is doing? I think is also part of that creation of the election. So there's the mechanics of doing the election, but what are we voting for? That's something I think we need to clarify.
Yeah, okay. We can definitely add that to the election planning section to talk about that.
And that is what I wanted to address or speak on for a moment before we consent to the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, really, it was just going back to some clarification from Harris regarding the comment of not focusing on the problem statement, but more focus on legitimacy of circle. And which one is priority? And what counts as doing that and not doing that?
Okay, so I changed that to circle, structure, legitimacy, and V4 election planning. Would that cover everybody's kind of ideas for that section?
Yeah, that sounds really pretty good for me. It really is. Are we looking at legitimacy, priority, election, then problem sensing board? Is that the roadmap or path or right way to look at that? Yeah.
Okay. Mercy, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I think it's been covered by Harris and Quasar. Basically, I was thinking that maybe a roundtable would be good to figure out what everybody feels is the top priority. But I think that for me, it's been covered. So if anybody has anything else, I think that would be fine.
Okay.
But, yeah.
Awesome. So is everybody happy with this agenda structure? No objections?
Well, I don't have any objections, but I would like to clarify. So we've agreed to have a roundtable discussion about this for later.
Yeah, we'll do funded proposal subcircle clarification, then PA updates from Nadia, and then we'll get into circle structure, legitimacy, and V4 election planning conversations.
Wonderful. Okay, great.
Okay. And then if we have time, we'll get into creation of Polis wiki surveys. That may be a sub component to that conversation. There is a short Fund 9 section that the admin team would like to bring up with the circle. And then we have the question of opening up the circle meetings and how that will work. All right, so let's get started. Mercy, do you want to kick us off with the funded proposer subcircle formation and funding clarification?
Sure, I can do that. Can I share screen?
Yep, you should be able to as co-host. Let me stop my share.
Okay, this will likely not take 15 minutes. I just put 15 in case there are questions at the end. But basically, yeah, I hope that I don't come across as defensive. The only thing is that I just want to make sure that I offer this space both as a learning and as a chance for anyone, if anybody has any sort of lingering thoughts or questions, I'm here and I can answer it. Fortunately, Steve is here as well. I'm sure that he can chip in if need be. So basically, when it comes to the funded proposal subcircle, this was something, as most of you know, I have a big job when it comes to, in addition to being a family person, there's WADA, and then Yeah, I just wanted to get involved in governance. So that's why I stood. Hopefully, if I'm able to figure out or help move the governance along, I thought I will also help with the work that I do at WADA. So, I came in and I thought I would be good to just hit the ground running. So thankfully, at that time, I had Stephen, who was my mentor because he was the V2 rep. He was so very helpful. So, we thought, okay, let's start a subcircle. Very quickly, I brought in Steve because, those of you that know Steve, he really has his, his stances on the ground in terms of what goes on in the community. He's a realist when it comes to governance. I've benefited from his counsel, even in WADA. So that's how it went. And then we realized that, for us to actually be able to be as inclusive as possible, especially when it comes to funded proposals and, like you have to make an extra effort to sort of reach them, we decided that we'll go on a regional basis. So we looked, we went to the Eastern Town Hall. Me is a leader there. If she wasn't able to be part of the town hall, she would have nominated somebody. Thankfully, she was. Emilia Safo, she is a co-founder of the Africa Town Hall. She was happy to join us. And then Alex as well was happy to join. He is also a lead in the Latin America. And then, as we all know, Vanessa, when it comes to documentation, facilitation, she's just amazing. A lot of the things that we have achieved in the funded proposal subcircle, I will just give a huge kudos to Vanessa. So that was the thinking behind these people that were chosen to help me to make this a seat work. So that's how I approached it. As I said, this is a learning. So if anybody thinks that anything could have been done differently, maybe we can discuss that. So in terms of funding, how it has been was that for Fund 7, which was our first half, the first 3 months from February to May, we had the rapid funding. So that's what we used to fund the subcircle. And then for Fund 8, which is June to September, we had put in, and this is also thanks to Vanessa, she was sort of thinking a way ahead. She'd put in a proposal, and that is what we are using to fund the subcircle from June till September, which actually is 4 months. But it's being disbursed the same way that all other funded proposals are being disbursed on a monthly basis. Our rapid funding, which is 7K for Fund 8, which is the current term that we're in, is 7K. It's still with most of it, well, it's also being disbursed per month, I would say. Most of it is still with Andre. He does a good job. And so far we have allocated about 600 for regional translations. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So what have we done for this money that has sort of come our way? So a lot of work, thanks to this team, has just gone into sensing not just regional town halls, but also, sort of the day-to-day as they interact, they bring back issues. We have a Mario board that we are working through. We started working with IOG and Nadia and the proposer group, the CAPA group. There's been a break in that because we had to focus on helping the template, put in the idea skill template and sort of get the proposals running. But we do have a list of issues that we are working through, thanks to access that we have to people like Chris, Danny, Marek, and so on. We have made it a point to have regular appearances at the Catalyst coordinator meetings. Those of you that have been there almost every week, almost every 2 weeks, which is when they meet, we have been there to, hear what people have to say and to get feedback. We worked with IOG to get a more streamlined calendar for funding release, which we feel it was such an issue for funded proposals. And we just want to always will say thank you to IOG and also to Nadia with some of the facilitation with those meetings. One of the things that we've also done is when you go to idea scale right now for the funded proposals, in terms of submitting proposals, there's some guidance notes. A lot of work went into that. We got that done. Marek and Danny were able to upload it onto idea scale. We have sourced the community, so on a regional basis, to have those translated into Spanish, Portuguese, French, Arabic, Swahili. We are trying to figure out if we can get it also translated in Vietnamese and Japanese as well. It might be, it's running a bit behind. Everybody is busy. But even if it's not done by the 30th, we are hoping that it will, once it's done, people can just use that to precede sort of Fund 10. And then the proposal assessor guidelines document, that's something that Nadia and team is working on, and we have been happy to provide contributions to that. I want to, at this point, pause. If there's any questions, if there's anything that doesn't seem clear, I am happy to take any questions. There has been talk of some investigations that have gone on. There has been talks about maybe owing some ADA. There's some GitHub comments that I'm even not too clear how what that means. I just, before anything, I would say that I haven't tried to hide anything or any payments that I was aware of without going to any too much detail. So yeah, anyone has any comments or questions or suggestions as to how this could have been handled or done better. Thanks.
Thanks, Mercy. Anybody have any questions for Mercy? Quasar, go ahead.
Thank you. I don't have any questions for Mercy. I would like to say that my question in the Slack was not questioning where the funds were or what they were used for. It was not meant to be personal at all. Trying to figure out where to request them was coming from. The templates that was being submitted. I'm stepping in here from picking up where Dimitri was. That was not certainly not. I was not questioning you at all, Mercy. What I was trying to do is figure out where the funds were, when it was requested. And between Dimitri and I, we spent quite a bit of time trying to figure out how to submit or what to submit. And, this whole, the circle pay a rep thing for quite a while. And I believe there was some gaps in communication that could have prevented a lot of work on mine and Dimitri's part, and also certainly prevented any hard feelings that came from the question. Me questioning, it wasn't questioning you at all. So yeah, that's all.
Thanks for that, Quasar. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, that's I'm just trying to figure out the accountability part and how detailed the ticket needs to be to request for funding, looking at the proposals themselves, the Fund 7 one, Fund 8 one. It's a lot to take, a lot to pick up without very clear things. So, Mercy, I love you and thank you for everything you're doing. I'm glad you're doing the sub circle. I'm glad you took on the duty, the role, obligation
of being the original circle rep. Now, this is my question for Marcy, and I'll hold it to the end, if that's all right.
And I am available offline. I love one-to-one conversations. I've had a lot of those with Nadia, with Joey, Steve almost every day. So, I'm open for, any questions, anything that isn't clear. And the only thing that I am doing this is, we've all been around long enough. It starts as a drip sort of thing, and then before we realize it's all over Twitter, and then it's distracting us from doing the work that we need to do. So I hope that this settles things for anyone that has any concerns. And as I said, happy to hear any, sort of for learning for future. Thanks, everyone. I'll stop sharing now.
Thanks, Mercy. Any other questions or comments? Nadia.
I just think it's real easy for us to go to the source with each other. Like if there's a question, we can just go to each other and ask it and anticipate that, because we've all spent, I think we all have a tenderness for having spent a lot of time fielding things that get blown way out of proportion. If we can just have a clear conversation about them and anticipate that the people who are here with a deep intention to do good. Here we all sit. So that doesn't mean we all do it perfectly, but I think it's really challenging to have a team operate like a team if we're not treating each other like we're all on the same team. So that's not directed at anyone specifically. I don't really even know what happened in this exchange about the subcircle thing, but I can just say generally that it's not hard to respectfully request information of someone if it's needed, and we can respectfully provide it to each other and not like get up in arms more broadly in a way that does a lot more damage than it needs to. So I just put a stake in the ground for that, because there's no need for us to perpetuate what's been happened in the past, and there's no need for us to not be able to move forward and set up something for V4 where there's a real excitement about being able to come on here and work together. So the more we can start, especially as it's a disjointed group and some are here and some are new and information's not always clear, we need to figure it out. Like I think it's really important that we aim to work as a team together and anticipate that that's what we want from each other.
Thanks, Nadia. Very, very wise words. Felix.
I would love to add to this very, very wise words, and maybe saying, okay, also when starting now with new group and everything, getting on the same page already, figuring out, okay, what happens already? What do we try to achieve at the end? Because I think it's not really clear. And how do we want to achieve those things? And maybe not running with the same mistake which has been made before. Learning from that and say, okay, let's set up very first, what do we actually want to get out of this calls here? We have agenda items, but is there something, I think this not being clear, not to ourselves and not to the community, makes us ineffective. I would love to maybe, like Nori says also often, yeah, just step back and look on first, okay, before jumping in a bunch of important topics already, let's figure out how do we actually want to approach those topics. It's more important than having each week a nice agenda list and whatnot and things we speak about, but yeah.
Thanks, Felix. And that might be a really great thing to add to what we do here, is to have a high level kind of why statement or mission behind the circle that kind of drives the activities and what we're trying to accomplish. I think I agree, it's been a little vague, but I think there is a lot of energy right now around circle structure, legitimacy, and election planning. And so I think that was in our previous meeting, that's what everybody said they were excited about and are here mostly on a volunteer basis to really drive towards. So yeah. Steve, you have something you want to add?
Yeah, and it's just my way of phrasing what Felix is kind of saying and Nadia is kind of saying, and it's something that's always impressed me about the Cardano community is that, you know, there's a really strong sense of people taking this work seriously, you know, and I really appreciate that. Nobody's kidding around in this community, and in taking it seriously, then, you know, to reinforce your own validity in the community, you know, you have to take yourself seriously. And I think that oftentimes when I see personal conflicts in the Cardano community, it's going over that line of taking yourself seriously and taking things personally. And, you know, like I as a life practice, I try to not take anything personally, right? Because physics, you know, that's my answer for why, you know, physics tells me to not take anything personally. And I think that there is that level of when people have questions, you know, like, are they having questions because they're suspicious? And then the response to some people's questions are, you know, like our third or fourth response to somebody's questions, you know, at best should be suspicion, right? You know, like there's nothing wrong with asking questions, and there's nothing wrong with responding to questions, and they should just simply be answered when they can be answered. And I think in this sense, because this is a worldwide community, you know, the words that we use to ask questions are really tricky, you know, and you know, we just have to be aware of how easy it is to, you know, misunderstand somebody because of the words they use, right? You know, because in a different context and in a different culture, that word's first meaning for you may not be the first meaning for somebody else. It might be the second or third definition of a word, you know. It's all like it's hard, you know. Communication is difficult, and it requires a lot of nuance and understanding of other perspectives. And I think that that's an ongoing exercise, you know, from now until you know, into the future in the Cardano community. And I'm very confident in the community because there's most everybody in here is very, very good at it, you know. I mean, in the whole community. I mean, you know, my partner first, she got interested after me being involved in the community for 3 or 4 months because she was eavesdropping on all of my conversations, and she was just amazed at the level of conscious conversation that goes on in the community. And, you know, that was nice to hear from her because I didn't have to explain to her why I'm involved, you know. So anyway, I'll be quiet. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve. And then we'll open up to Chris, and we should probably move on to Nadia's segment after this.
Yeah, I just want to really dovetail off of what has already been said, that if we're trying to bring more clarity to this, maybe we can take a leaf out of some of the discussion from last night in the GPS after town hall. First of all, one of the great things about that presentation is it really sort of centered on this idea of having very clear objectives. And I think that's maybe where we could help to improve our approach, is by just clarifying the objectives. And you know, by going, you know, one step further, Nin discussed this idea of SMART goals being specific, measurable, actionable, realistic, and time bound. And I think that's a really, really good framework for thinking about how we can prioritize what it is that we're capable of achieving in the limited time that we've got available. You know, if something seems like it's going to be a really long burn, maybe it's something that we need to chunk up and make it a bit more manageable. So when we're thinking about election planning, it's great, but maybe we need to put some really, really tight time-bound frames around it, or certainly around the minutiae of tasks, so that, you know, we can make some meaningful progress towards it. That's just as an example. I don't mean that as a particular thing, just to give it some sense of something that's tangible that we could be anchoring on to. That's all I wanted to say.
Thanks, Chris. All right, let's move on to Nadia's section on PA updates, and then we'll move into the big topic of circle structure, legitimacy, and election planning.
Great, so I'll just keep it short and say that following last week's working group call, I came back and took the route that I had suggested there, which is checking with the other nominees, which were Tommy and Philip for V3. Philip is not available, but Tommy was amenable to it. He makes logical sense because he really understands the role and having applied for it, and also is one of the more active people in the PA community anyway. So he and I also work closely together on other stuff. So, and we've been through a lot of the same processes, like he went through the VPA process, resolution process himself, long-standing member of the community. So he would have been here today, except today was the first day of a vacation. He's on a train. So I thought I would show up just to report that and to say that we will certainly have a lot of backup in the community to come should he need it, but he will take his own approach. I have not used any of the Fund 9, this coming funds rapid funding, so that will be just to figure out, and we'll get him started as soon as possible. So that is my report. I'm very confident and happy about that outcome. I hope that you guys are too. I think it solves the also crunch timing challenge. So certainly open for comments or feedback on it or any questions, but once he returns from being away, I think he'll just pick things up, and I will certainly be in place to be able to help on anything that needs coming up to speed. And then I'm going to transition to doing a lot of the other stuff in the working groups. So that's that. Yeah, I'll pause there.
All right. Thanks, Nadia. Any questions, comments?
We'll miss you, Nadia.
Yeah.
I'll be around. I'll be here, not going anywhere.
All right. So let's move into the circle structure, legitimacy, and V4 election planning. We started this conversation last week at the working session. There is a Miro board that was available for brainstorming. There's notes and stuff on there. I'll drop that in chat if you want to jump in there. But yeah, open it up for conversation. I think the election itself was a priority topic because we don't have a lot of time if we're going to be doing voting mechanisms. So we need to decide what we're doing fairly quickly. But there is a lot of discussion now around the circle structure and legitimacy and things like that. So maybe we can start there. Harris, do you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I do just want to say, depending on the structure of how we run sort of the nomination and the list of potential candidates, it can be done in a number of different ways. We could use idea scale. We certainly could use another form. So even if it is a Google form or something of that nature, as long as we know who the candidates are and the details of their platform, the ballot information could be loaded on the back end and can be a bit decoupled from the deadline that's presented for proposal. So I wanted to throw that out there, that talked a bit more with Mike McNulty and have a little bit more perspective that we don't necessarily have to run against this existing timeline. If we want to collect names in a different way and run it as different ballots for different purposes, potentially we have opportunity to do that. But I do think the biggest discussion to be had, I think, is, are we going to let each respective group run their own elections, and then we don't need this more general election, or will we run it in a different way? So just wanted to throw that out there, that things could work independently. We certainly could bring it to the ballot So we have some flexibility. I just wanted to present that.
Okay. Thanks, Harris. Felix, you had your hand up and dropped out of the queue. Do you want to jump in next?
No, I wanted to go behind the queue.
Okay.
Listening for-
Steve, you're up next.
I have watched the last two circle meetings and this discussion about how to hold the next election. My thought is, it might be late. Give me just a minute. It might be late for this, but I'm kind of wondering if it may not be too late. I feel like in terms of legitimacy and kind of satisfying the critiques that have come up about how circle reps are elected, could be resolved just simply by being on idea scale, and if we can sync up, the placement of the circle elections on the idea scale funding process as a matter of, that's how it's done, because I think if we're, the easiest way for people to vote on elections is to see proposals from the people who want to be representatives, right? And that can easily be done in a challenge setting. And to me, like this kind of fits in the current challenge that's F9 DAOs, whatever that symbol means, Cardano. This is what this is, or the beginning of it in the lead, at least. And it's an easy way for people to pop their name in there and get voted or not get voted. And I think that would alleviate so many criticisms, if we could do that, if not now, then in the future. And I think people who would be willing to be a representative or put themselves up for an election, they already know that. And I don't think it's too late for Fund 9. It just may be too late to satisfy certain criteria from, the IOG or somebody's criteria. But I don't know why we couldn't put out an announcement and say, hey, if you want to be on version 4, put your name up in that challenge and we'll see who gets elected. I think that's easy. I don't think it adds on a lot of overhead, but that's just been my thought since the last meeting.
Thanks, Steve. So we have at least one proponent of idea scale. And Harris, it's good to know that we could decouple that if we needed to. I'd love to know more details on how that would work technically, and maybe explore that a bit if we need more time. But yeah, Joey.
Yeah, I mean, I like the ideal scale idea as well because people are comfortable with that and they're used to it. The concern I'd have is, I think maybe a couple of circle versions back, they inserted some stuff after the voting and there was some conflict from the community about putting stuff into that process. So maybe if we did it as a separate thing, that could alleviate that. Also, I dropped into that general discussion. I get this information from the Project Management Institute, the way that they handle the voting for their board. And basically they use a piece of software. They send you a link. You click on that link. It has the list of the candidates. You click on a candidate's name and there has a video of where they introduce themselves and they pose about 3 or 4 different questions that the candidate actually answers and responds to in that video. And this seems to work for them. They're global and they do it as well. So that may be another option to think about if sometime in the future.
Thanks, Joey. And some of those ideas may be really great to add in with the idea scale and have kind of a template format, like here's some questions each candidate answers. Here's some opportunities for video, whatever. Yeah, so I like some of those things that I heard. Felix.
Yeah. Also directly to this, I would really love to see just like an action plan to say, okay, what do we need to do then next? Is it fully up to IOHK to do, or where does the community comes in? When define, for example, like in a proposal, say, okay, when there are parts the nominee have to fill out, what are we asked for? What are the criteria? Whatnot. But to know from both sides, okay, what is actually really required to make already this happening? It wouldn't be a huge change, but it would be a next step already to simply approach idea scale in this regard and say, hey, actually, okay, it would be already half chain vote. Would be better already what we had before. And before going into too much discussions around a bunch of different projects, maybe focusing on this because it captures then as well, okay, for which groups you want them? Are the PAs and VPAs there, or do they handle it internally? And only by targeting already, hey, maybe idea scale could be a solution. There are a bunch of questions, a bunch of topics which have to be worked out. We don't have much of time. So what I really like to say, last call we said already, yeah, there are two possibilities. You think about one was DWalk, where you said, no, it's Discord integration. It doesn't make so much sense. The other was the challenge one. Just say, okay, let's move forward, not circling back each meeting and say, oh, okay, what is the maybe best idea? And say, okay, let's decide on this one, make it concrete, create action items, and just make it happen. As in, not the best solution, but the best next step.
Thanks, Felix. I think that's a great idea. And I think it is a question Harris posed it earlier when he spoke around which groups will use idea scale to vote. It might not be everybody. So that'd be an interesting topic to actually explore. Maybe the PAs and VPAs have their own community strong enough they can decide. And maybe IOG's vision is to become a service provider to catalyst. Maybe the idea scale stuff is kind of a service for the different functional groups that need election support. And then they can reach out and say, let's do it that way. Just as an idea. Quasar, do you want to jump in next?
Yes, I'd like to, if I may. Although somebody's after me, that'd be great. Elias is getting out of the car, so. Yeah, are there other people looking to talk?
Yeah, Harris and Joy have their hands up.
Jump in.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of clarify, right now we have until the 30th to get things done with the normal process, which, I was trying to bring some urgency to our last meeting, and we ended up deciding to reach out to the community and defer that. So we have mostly missed this window in terms of doing it in a traditional sense, right? Where we have to create a challenge, which would be a seat, and there would have to be people nominating themselves with, filling out their platform, and then it ends up on the ballot. So kind of going through that traditional channel is there. Now, if we have enough information, whether it's like, here's the candidate, or here's the seat, here's the candidates, for that, and it ends up in a CSV file, we can backload it, right? So however that information is collected, we can add it to the ballot, so it would actually be there for voting purposes. So just to kind of clarify, there is the formal process, where, so if there was an amount that needed to be said, hey, the PA role is going to have this much money attached to it, and then that has to be voted on for that challenge, right? And then there would have to be proposals that would go into that. That would be one way to validate the amount that particular role would get, plus nominations and ballot entries. If we're just trying to decide who gets it with a flat amount, that's fine. But the decision is, okay, if we have subcircles, great. How many people are elected in a subcircle? Are there 0? Or is there 1? Is there 2? These are things we have to decide, and that's where we wanted to go to the community and ask. That was my understanding of last week's meeting. So we need to fundamentally say, what are we voting for? Right? What are the seats? Is it the same? Or is there different mechanisms for each seat? All those things. We really need to get to brass tacks and say, here's what we're going to do. And I agree. Let's just decide something and go for it. And I do think that having it in a ballot, having voices around the world at different time zones solves a lot of the pain that we've had. But let's pull it together and propose something.
Thanks, Harris. Chris.
Yeah, thanks. I was just reflecting on the that holacracy slide that you showed last week, Harris. And one of the things I recognize is that from that slide anyway, it does seem like there's likely to be different sizes of subcircle group dependent on the sort of the role or the area, right? Like, what do we know in terms of the makeup of this group here? Well, currently we don't really have engineering representation to any sort of significant degree. And quite often that's because engineers are heads down, they're building, they're like, you know, locked away trying to get product out. That's just how it is. So I could certainly see that, you know, might be challenging to put some definitions around size of subcircles. It would feel to me like that's more of an informal group, and actually it's kind of participatory, open and inclusive of those that want to be there. But then, you know, the actual circle group, certainly currently, it feels like this is the election, right? The elections are for these seats in this group, and the subcircles could be a bit more dynamic. They could spin up and spin down. That's just my idea.
Quasar, and then Harris.
In going through the great search for decision-making body of Catalyst, you know, circle, is it there? Is it not? Where is it? One of the items that where I believe that it is the timing of certain things as kind of an acceptable parameter change. We're trying to do something before Fund 9 or within Fund 9 or even within the round itself of funds is something that perhaps could be altered, not to extend terms or anything like that, but it would also to give us a chance to not start a fund, start a new circle, and get behind everything. So is changing the timing of the transitions of circles something that anyone would be interested in pursuing? And are we sure that right now the groups, the functional groups, are even the right groups that need to be voting on or need to be included? I've got something else, but it'll come back to me. But those are my thoughts. Like, what can we do to change the timing, the cadence, where it makes more sense, where we can actually predict or prepare for results of a Fund 8 or Fund 9. You know, I think it'll make more sense to alter that a little bit. I mean, actually, I'm going to be hands down, flat out honest with you. There's a few things in Catalyst. The timing is just horrible. Funded proposers, like, you know, people onboarding and then the bringing in the new challenge teams to meet proposers. At the same time, we're bringing funded proposers in to meet coordinators. Like, I don't know if you've ever found yourself in that intersection, but it's highly confusing if you are a funded proposer and a challenge team for 2 rounds. Like, just the language around that is impossible. It's nothing but stop, go, here, there, all at once, every day. So that's one thing that could be, that doesn't speak directly to Circle, but it does for funded proposers. So that would make sense. Challenge teams aren't represented. Gives us an opportunity to think about that. That might give us an idea of where a circle vote or defining a circle could be. But at the same time, if you want to do something by the 30th and Fund 9, you've got my support. Let's go.
Thanks, Quasar. Harris.
Yeah, I just wanted to reiterate that we could decouple from this deadline of the 30th, come up with other ways of creating the list of things, sideload that, right? And then it ends up on the ballot when voting happens. We also could run a special election where there's a special vote, which is never, we haven't done, but we think we actually have the capacity to run it, as long as it's not overlapping, right? So as soon as we're done with the regular voting on challenges and proposals, as soon as we're in the tally phase, we could start the general election or a special election specifically for circle things, and then people could engage the app and engage the individuals to elect. So that is another option, right?
So Harris, can I just clarify? Do you mean having the special election on idea scale so that it shows up in the app? Is that how you mean that?
That's correct. So in both cases. So if we sideload it, it shows up in the app, right? If we wait till the end of the regular voting, and then we load things up in idea scale or some other format, and then run it as a second voting event. So we're looking at things in voting events, and so right now we just have a regular cadence of fund events. Right. We also want to introduce potential for multiple events, different time slotted events is something that, we're thinking about. And I just want to open that up, that we could decouple that. And we need to bring legitimacy to the circle, right? We need more time. and let's take the time, but ideally let's hurry up as well. Right, let's experiment. Like the sooner we experiment, and because right now we're just sort of in this stagnant sort of mode and trying to get things right, but let's experiment. Let's throw it out there. Let's do it. Just showing that we have options in terms of the mechanisms of how we might do this in their existing frameworks.
Okay. Thanks, Harris. And that's good clarification. And just for the flow of this conversation, I would want to table any technical detail conversations to when we get there, and talk more about if this is a path we want to take. Any important clarifying things would be important, but when voting registration happens and things like that might be a side conversation for a working group. I have my hand up because I just wanted to chime in a little bit on some thoughts recently.
I object. I'm kidding, Nori. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Because we're talking about legitimacy, and just on my reflection, being the facilitator for 2 different circles now, I've noticed that there are certain subgroups or seats that struggle to connect with their community and problem sense and do their job effectively. And it's made me think that maybe we're approaching that part of it backwards. And that comes back to the question of which community should be represented on the circle. And if you have a community strong enough that they can say, we've organized, we've self-selected this person to represent us in the circle to communicate, then that person doesn't need to go find their community. They don't need to problem sense. They're merely a representative of this community already doing all of those functions. And I'm seeing that with the PA group very strongly, and to an extent also the funded proposer side. But that made me think maybe that's how circle seats are actually kind of allocated, is by, in a holocratic model, there's no election for who comes in. Each group decides who the lead link will be and send somebody to that circle. So maybe there's a possibility of no elections or some elections, or I don't know, but I just want to throw it out there that I think some of the stuff that the circle is doing is a little bit backwards, and we shouldn't be problem sensing by electing people and having them go out. We should probably be problem sensing by people coming because they are intimately familiar and have been assigned by their community to represent their concerns. And then there's no problem sensing, it's problem reporting. So maybe we've been approaching that wrong. So I wanted to just toss that into the conversation. Quasar, and then Felix. And you're still muted, Quasar.
apologies. The general data holder has been a community that's a little bit tricky to reach. I'm glad you brought that up. I think SPO is one of those as well. Harris, I remember what I liked so much about what you had said last week, and what we were doing was pushing the vote for Circle, or doing something for Circle before governance week, before the voting. So voter registration / Catalyst Circle vote, or using that period before voting to push, to get the messaging out.
Thanks, Quasar. Felix.
What the categorization and which groups should be presented. I think we saw very interesting and effective tries yesterday also in the Catalyst GPS meeting. In the first part where they presented the categories, and in the second part, and I said, oh, okay, those categories can each have a representative system itself. And maybe this would be an interesting way just to figure out to say, okay, instead of trying to present groups, try to present topics which are built on purpose then. To say, might be maybe a more neutral approach as well, to say, okay, community and outreach is an important topic, and governance and identity is another one. Why not taking an example, what is already pioneered with the PAs and VPAs, with the subcircles, and try to see, oh, okay, how could the circle here itself, instead of trying to make a decision for its own, what is how you build aristocratic models, would say, okay, what is happening already, what is out there in the community, and how can we support them? And maybe that's our job then, right? To show what is out in the community, where are effective solutions built already, because we don't want to replace them, and just drafting our models then would be, in my opinion, a little bit even disrespectful in regard to the community, who spends a lot of time to figure out how, hey, look, this could work. And we have nothing to lose just by trying it out and say, oh, okay, let's implement this. Let's give it a try. Let's give it a try as we give it a try with what we do right now. And I'm very sure that it's a better try than what we have right now, because there are people who seriously spend a lot of time in it. And that's governance, right? That is Circle, in my opinion, what they are doing there. Or what ADAO is doing, or Swarm, or other groups. Have a chat with them, see, oh, okay, we don't even need maybe to define the criteria for the nomination. Maybe they have done already. They have a beautiful strategic framework already on the whole thing. They have done the work we don't have to do anymore, I think.
Thanks, Felix.
So, just to kind of, have a conversation about that. I mean, that was kind of the idea of the wiki survey, right? Was to have some outreach, get feedback from the community. That could be done for PAs, it could be done for various groups as well, right? Is to get those ideas out. So we need to do something quickly, though, I think.
So taking the draft from what was yesterday presented, the categories, then we have already the categories we invite the people to vote on. We also invite the categories to people to nominate them. There's a whole research already behind. People can go and look, oh, okay, what is the category about? Right, let me just drop a link here. I think you saw it already. But for example, this one to the categories from George Lovecraft from PACE. He's working since a while on it, and he's full-time Catalyst now. Woo! Yeah, 2 weeks ago, his last night job. It's amazing win for the community. There's a bunch of work done already. We just should support this and verify and say, oh, cool. And Catalyst GPS, which is in very close synergy designed with what George made as well.
All right. Thanks, Felix. All right. Steve, and then Quasar.
Yeah, I had a couple of thoughts. I personally, like I really like the idea of representation by category of topic rather than, labeling people. That said, I always will want to have stake pool operators represented in whatever kind of body we have going on. when it comes to the legitimacy of Circle, you know, I mean, and I'm just, you know, first time stepping in here, and you know, I don't watch all the Circle meetings, but I've watched quite a few of them, and from somebody in the community but not involved in the process, the Circle always seems self-absorbed, right? And that's the general feeling. You know, when I've spoken with people in the community about the Circle, that's what it seems to be, the impression. I think that that's not incorrect, and I don't mean it as a criticism, because I think trying to figure out how to work and be fair and, you know, do all these decentralized things that we all want to see happen, you know, the Circle does have to spend time discussing who they are. You know, I mean, it's part of self-awareness, you know, to know what you're doing and why you're doing it. So I don't mean that as a criticism. I'm just talking about, you know, what's happened up until now. You know, I think for most people that I've spoken with about this, you know, the hope from Circle was that it's going to be the segue into Voltaire, and that still never seems to come up. You know, it's like, what's the reality? What are the facts about how we actually, as a community, segue into the Voltaire era? And this is just clouds of question marks and ignorance about that process still. So you know, like, you know, with the funded proposer group, it is, you know, like, and my going out to funded proposers that I know and associate with and work with, you know, what surprised me in my conversations of what they wanted to talk about, you know, it was money. And, you know, I mean, you know, like I got into crypto from the idea of being my own banker. And I was, you know, kind of internally really seriously surprised that people were like scared, you know, nervous. It makes them nervous to have all this ADA because they don't know what the smart thing to do with it. They don't know how to decide, you know, cash in or hold it, you know. And I mean, these are kind of basic be your own banker questions. And so it's given me some ideas about proposals or projects to work on to kind of help people alleviate that and get over the shyness of being involved in crypto. But, you know, the reality of the funded proposer group is funded proposers are happy and they're busy as hell. You know, they have a lot to do because they got a project and they got to make good on it. So that's why I like the idea presented yesterday, you know, about this GPS thing, you know, is to start thinking in terms of categories and quit labeling people in the community.
Thanks, Steve. We're starting to get towards the end of the meeting here. We probably have about 40 minutes left to get through all the rest of this stuff. I would like to start converging now on actual concrete next action steps. Last time we talked about polis surveys. I think we missed a little bit on assigning who was going to do that. And I think we need to start creating working groups with people that are interested in pushing some stuff forward. We had one form around having an after town hall for ideas on how to do the vote to get community input on that. And I think it was going to be Felix, Reese, and Joy to coordinate creating that after town hall. Is that still the case? And can we start that as an actual concrete action item for next week?
The circle would be on board, definitely, yes. So if we say, okay, we make ourselves available for the next town hall, which is next week on June, well, yeah, the weekly town hall, June 29.
Okay. And then I'd love to get ideas for next steps as well. Like, I think idea scale seems to be exciting to people, and I would love to see somebody kind of come up with a proposal around that too, so that we have some forward momentum on that. But Quasar and then Harris.
I like the challenge categories. It's also so broad that it's everything. Like, it sounds like it's great, but if you look at the categories, if you got identity, national governance, and, you know, climate change, that's everything. It's very easy. Like, I can take insurance and attach to all of these. That's my domain. So I'm happy to move forward to it. I'm afraid it's analysis paralysis potential, but it's still a great idea and should be pursued. On the 29th, that'll be the day that proposal submissions no longer due. So everyone's going to be tired, exhausted, or at least my experience is everyone comes to me and we end up doing 24 or 36 hours straight trying to put proposals together. And the town hall, or yeah, okay, so I'm sorry, the proposals of the finalization will be that Wednesday night or Thursday morning is what you call it, right? I would rather do something like now today in idea scale and take advantage of this oncoming push of proposers and proposals that'll be coming through and see if you can capture something there. Yeah, that's my thought.
All right.
I wanted to chime in, I guess, a little bit on the category concept. So I think the roles were originally created to help improve the human process of, you know, where is the pain that's related to a funded proposer? You know, where is the pain as a community advisor, right? And to be listening and to hear feedback and improve the catalyst process. Right. And so shifting to categories is going to turn it into, well, like, well, you know, how do we make better NFT libraries? And, you know, how do we structure, you know, category specific things? And in theory, that maybe worked and collaborated with challenge teams. Right. And so is that role already created? Right. And so does that, you know, challenge teams is certainly something we should involve in the circle, but the circle's original intent was to fix the process. Where is the pain in the human element and make the process better? And so I don't want to, well, I love categories. I love it. But some of that role is already kind of being covered. But, you know, expanding what roles to improve the overall process, I think is good. You know, and certainly, you know, the focus of Catalyst Circle, you know, has been to work on Catalyst specific pain in general. And so it's something that you know, we definitely want to keep focus on. There's definitely more to do with Voltaire, which is coming. But, you know, the focus of Catalyst Circle is for Catalyst and keeping that focus. And we will be actually running some experiments very soon in terms of Voltaire things. And so, you know, let's, you know, keep that in mind. It is still coming. We'll have more details soon. But it, you know, for the time being, the purpose of this circle is to focus on Catalyst.
Felix.
At this point, when looking on Catalyst GPS, when they linked the representative groups to the categories, it was with the attempt to make also the representative groups more effective. Right now, you see, for example, when you speak about which groups are presented, proposers. Proposers, for example, from East Asia submit in Crow East Asia, Crow Cardano. Proposers from Africa propose in Crow Africa, Crow Cardano. Now you have a problem. Do they speak with each other? No, not really. And I tell you from my own experience, by setting up a category where you have community and outreach, you bring the projects together. Independent, and now for the community advisors, it's exactly the same. A good community advisor focus on his challenges. He has to go and develop ecosystem or depths and integrations and those in Cardano. So he has a struggle to figure out already in which challenges do I assess. Saying, okay, the assessors will then apply also to the categories, makes it more effective to them. And the representative bodies would not relate anymore on this role specific in the only the roles out of the context, but the roles which gather under groups, under categories. And each time you have then more diversity in the end, by making the categories, then by separating it into groups which are overacting already in all these challenges, but don't really have this clarity for themselves, right? So even from the representative side, I think you can make it much more effective in this regard and have a much more closer direction to what is going on with the community which acts under those pillars. Because then you will identify there are some who only work in community and outreach and some who only works in governance and identity. And you're able to identify them much faster. You don't have to track them over several funding rounds and 200 different challenges, for example. It's hard to find the people who are actually working on the topics and just keep track. By categories, you assemble them already and you bring them into one sheet now. And it's very easy to track and see, okay, who's actually already working on all these topics very close. They're like on a table now instead of in the jungle.
Yeah, definitely valid point. Definitely see your perspective for sure.
Razor, and then Chris.
I feel to kind of set off a nice little idea. Perhaps this category does allow us to move towards a domain expert for some of these assessment questions and things. As a general ADA holder, there's still not much going on for the new people that have not been funded and are new to the community. So that's something that's pretty, in my mind, something that needs a lot of attention because there's going to be a lot more people coming in. And right now, I don't think there's that there's not the hospitality, nor is there a real clear path. The categories might be part of that as well. Since I'm on the challenge team with George, and my plan for this next week and before the proposal submission is to be holding a lot of Twitter spaces and asking proposers to come up. Generally, I get a lot of people, sending me their proposals. What can we do to act now and take advantage of the time, not act crazy or do anything scary? Is there something that I can do while I'm doing this to help us build legitimacy or address the board? And that's it. I'm done.
All right. Thanks, Razor. Chris.
Yeah, I think I just want to chime in. I think trying to put categories in at this late stage is a mistake. I'm just going to call it out. I don't think the categories are clear enough. Identity is pervasive across almost everything. So to be able to clarify what identity means in this perspective is going to take a bit of discussion. I'm not saying that I don't think that maybe thinking about how we extend circle, region, focus and groups in time, but given the pressing time issue to get to a sensible CCv4 process, by trying to change everything entirely now, it seems like it's a bit, it will be a bit of a misstep, perhaps.
Maybe I expressed myself wrong. The idea is not to take all the category system for a whole catalyst already and the proposals apply and everything, not at all. Only to use the categories to say, these are the seats people nominate themselves for. Because in the idea scale, the categories are defined by existing challenges.
Yeah.
So the categories are able to represent each and every challenge which has been submitted so far.
But I'm not sure the circle is there to serve the challenges.
No, not the challenges. It's only what does a represent. In our case, a community, funded proposals or community proposal assessors or whatnot. And we see it doesn't really work. For example, with the general ADA holders, we see this really difficult. SPO doesn't really make sense. What the fuck are tool makers and maintainers? Again, no clue. And I was the rep that in circle version 1. So to simply use the categories to say, these are the categories, because they are there already, which are represented by a person or whatnot. And we have the subcircles already, like the PAs or whatnot. And this is the idea behind, right? When communities are strong enough to identify themselves and to set their own person up, they can. But the nominees we send out are not anymore SPO and funded proposer and whatnot. They're representing these 5 categories: community and outreach, governance and identity, development, and what was it? I don't know them in head, but yeah. This wouldn't change anything that much.
It's a significant enough change that it does kind of shift the focus for what the intention of the circle was about, in my understanding.
The thing what I tried to answer before when Harry said the main goal is circle is to sense the community and to facilitate those communications and to figure out, okay, what is going on? And when you say now, okay, you have representatives about categories. Let's say, for example, I'm the representative for community and outreach. Make fucking hell of sense for me, for example, in my case, because, cool. This is Simba Labs and WADA and Catalyst School and Swarm and whatnot projects, right? Rather than to say toolmakers and maintainers, who the fuck is this?
Well, I mean, the toolmakers role is a bit of an interesting one because, again, that would be where I would see there would be an engineering seat there, right? But we don't, and that was kind of the point that I was trying to make a little while ago. Is that we don't have engineering kind of represented in the circle currently, but it would seem to be it would be sensible for it to sit under a toolmakers seat, and that's not to mean that. Joey, I think you're the toolmaker seat. That's not so that you shouldn't be here at all. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that I think if we were to look at like this in terms of what are those sort of perspectives that are missing. Okay, the roles within Circle, the representative roles seem to be quite reasonably well defined, and I think I'm just. The issue that I have with categories is that it seems like it's then going to just surface narratives around priority causes for challenge themes, right? And discussion about challenges and that's about it, rather than being like more around, as was the intention initially, to try and understand how to figure out the messy human processes that we're trying to unpack and unravel and demonstrate. I'm not saying that I don't think that it doesn't warrant change. I'm just saying I'm not sure whether putting it into the categories as they've been set out in the Git book, whether that's the right approach. That's my opinion.
Just last short back, then I shut up, I promise. Sorry. And sorry, I think using my SafeX example was a horrible example. The Safe, for example, we don't have, let's say, an engineering perspective right now in the circle, right? Okay, with the categories, for example, you have products and integrations. You have development and infrastructure. These are needs which we are not able yet to represent. And where we could say, hey, people like whatnot Sebastian, for example, or whatnot some Priyank, amazing coders, whatnot. You invite people like this then, right? Or maybe motivate them to nominate themselves. And by censoring, we still have the sub-communities. There are still the VPA funded proposer subcircuits. So they just can come together under categories where they think they belong the most to, than in certain actions or operations. But yeah, I shut up, sorry.
Yeah,
this needs discussion.
Really good points. I'm totally taking everything on board. It seems like it's one that still needs a little bit unpacking, right? Like I think we've got it from both sides. I can agree on some points. I don't agree on other points. It's not about that. Far from it.
And we are getting down to the last 25 minutes, and it sounds like we're not actually converging at all on next steps and the election. I'm wondering if we need more time, more meetings, or if we're just giving up on the fact that we're going to be tied to the Fund 9 deadlines, and we're just going to take the time to do a quality V4 as long as it takes. It could be in December when the elections happen. Is that what we're saying here, or do we really want to rein this in and say, let's make some decisions quickly and try something? Because I love the conversations, but it's still becoming very divergent. And it sounds like there's still a lot of conversations to happen the way we're doing it right now. So I just wanted to get people's sense here. Do we want to converge and start to do that? Or is there still a lot of conversations we need to have, maybe even with the community, and opening this up? Just to get, like, I think there is question around legitimacy. There's question around composition of the circle. There's question on how we do elections. There's a lot of complex things here, and we're just kind of opening up the conversation right now. And I don't see us coming to any next steps right now that are going to be highly aligned across this group unless we start to do it, or unless everyone's agreed that we don't want to do that and we want to just continue the conversation as long as it takes. Where are people at with that? And I just want to kind of shut down the conversations around categories versus anything, because I think we've had a lot of that, and let's just open up. What do we want to accomplish this meeting? And where do we want to go next? Quasar, and then Harris.
What I'm going to be doing over the next week and I'd like help with is I'll be going to multiple Twitter spaces. I'll be sending an invoice, doing all of this correct, using the GHA funds. So we'll be doing that, trying to both legitimize the circle, spread the word of the circle, and at the same time, maybe a different space, but focus on Project Catalyst Fund 9 proposal submission deadline. And I'm on the challenge team of the categories. So that's what I'm doing. That's what we're all going to be doing in a way. What can I do or provide from my experience for the rest of the group?
Thanks, Quasar.
Yeah, just from an urgency perspective, my understanding is last week we decided we didn't have this urgency. If we wanted to get into Fund 9, we should have started last week. And it was decided that we wanted to reach out to the community. So I don't believe we have an intent to suddenly slam in challenges and try to find people to fill in as proposals, nominations, all that good stuff. So I think.
Oh, I'm not talking about doing an election at all or anything.
No. I'm just saying the urgency. So anyway, just to kind of address your point, Nori. I think that's already passed, right? So then what is it we're trying to accomplish? And I agree with your statement, Felix. Experiment. Let's get it out there. And I wanted to just say one last thing about sort of the categories versus roles. We would not have such an improvement in the CA/PA process if we didn't have someone in that seat. So we get tremendous benefit from the Catalyst Circle existing and that role really operating in that capacity by Kenrick, Nadia. Huge improvements that were spurred because that role existed, and likely the same with funded proposers in my view. Do we want to continue that, or do we want to just try something else? And so I'm warming up to categories in general. But okay, so what do we want to accomplish now? What can we push forward? Certainly I like the idea of reaching out to the community, because maybe we're not to decide this to achieve legitimacy, right? Having those Twitter spaces, I think, is great. And that I thought was the outcome of last week, right? Who's going to do the poll.is? Because with poll.is, you have to seed it with something.
Yes.
Who is taking the action? Is it one poll that's like, what do we do? Or is it like specific? Do we do categories versus this? I mean, that might be a seeded question, right? should the circle make decisions, blah, 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 right? These are things that we would have to seed into that survey that would go out. So who's going to do it?
I don't know that I can do all of the surveys. I'll be happy to distribute them and to source them from the community.
So if we use Polis as a tool, yeah, we do need somebody to be the lead to seed those questions. And we can have more than one poll going at the same time. So it could be categories versus roles versus, I would throw in community as a third option there, because I still don't think roles and categories are enough. We need to decentralize. And if someone can come up with proof of community, they get a seat. And it's up to us to define what a community is, but then you get rid of all the problems around representation, sensing, getting legitimacy, because it's automatically, the legitimacy is there, and we've pushed that as far to the edge as possible. And I'm happy to seed those questions because I'm super passionate about it. But I think we need to talk about other things like how do elections work? How do, like, those kind of things. What categories do we want, and what questions do we want to seed out, and who's passionate about that? Because I think we do need working groups or task forces here to work on this over the next little while. So who would like to work on Polis polls? I guess, just to put that out there.
Is it a one-person job, or is it a buddy system?
It could be a buddy system. We could maybe even create a channel on Slack and make it collaborative, but somebody takes, I'm happy to take the role to actually create the Polis poll and put the stuff up if people want to contribute ideas and seed questions.
The way we did it for the code of conduct, so I think there can be only one administrator of the poll. So that's great. Thank you for Nori for signing up. But seeding it, it's not like the initial seed when we launch the poll and say, hey, community, here's the link. Some work should go into that initial list of 10 to 20 things, I think is what they recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So that collaboration might start in a spreadsheet that, in a buddy system kind of way. And then Nori would take the action to import that into Polis, and then we would all blast that out. Yeah, I'm going to be a little bit out of pocket in the next couple of weeks myself, so I can't volunteer, but I'm certainly happy to support the process since I've been through it.
Okay, so I will create a shared Google Doc and share that around, and then whoever's wants to add a seed question, we can do that. And then after a set number of days, I'm going to try to do it sometime. What day is it today? Thursday. By sometime next week, kick off the poll and send it out and get that through. And then if we need more than one poll, just let me know. And then maybe we could work it out on the Google Doc if things seem to be in 2 or 3 different major categories of questions.
The other thing was the discussion then over, and just had to chat in the live chat with Steve as well for the town halls. One question, Chris, could you check with Danny if we could maybe have something like a special town hall with maybe just in half an hour updates and infos directly going into the breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms could be hosted then from the reps even. So to say, go out, host a conversation, provide a wrap-up, provide the feedback, and come back with this then to the circle.
I've forgotten which date it was that we discussed that for.
First, the idea came first up last week, but there wasn't really action behind. So
It was last week, and it was for, I can't remember what date it was for. I was certainly happy to do it. We just need to basically try to pin down on what date we want to do it.
next week?
Next week. Yeah, we can ask. I think 30 minutes next week, the day before we shift to a pretty big stage, which is that might be the only issue, right? We're moving from proposal submission to evaluation. There's also seed stars that are definitely talking next week, and another couple of project closeouts. So
What if we keep the closeouts off just for 1 week, just to try to make it really consent, really short?
We can try and make those closeouts really short. We've already got them booked in. That's the thing. I know that, but we can see about truncating everything else. You know, the closeouts don't need to be, you know, like a bumper Gimbal Labs one, right? Like yesterday. Let me run it by Danny in any case, and then yeah, I'll follow up on Slack. No worries. Do we have that written down as well, by the way? Was it in the last circle minutes, which I probably should have seen, but apologies.
So we have 3 general action items right now. Quasar will do Twitter Space to get the word out, get input from the community. The reps will hold after town hall spaces next week. And then I'll kick off work on the polis polls and get that out next week as well. Anything else we want to do? And just for clarity for the notes and the minutes, we are not aligning with F9 for elections. Sounds like we want to get broad community input, and Circle V4 will happen at its own pace, but we're not kind of crunching down to try to meet the fund deadlines.
Does everyone agree with that?
Yep, no objections. All right, looks like we have broad support. Anything else that we want to work on next?
I think Fund 9 proposals, are there specific things we want to add?
Yeah, so that's next on the agenda. Let me bring that up really quick while we have some space here. So Fund 9 proposals. The admin team had been putting in proposals for Fund 9 for the circle. We feel that we won't be doing that anymore. If the circle needs funding, we want you all to figure out how that's done. And if you need rapid funding mechanisms, each seat should seek their own proposal for that. We don't want to be the gatekeepers or the fund managers for that either. So we're stepping back from that role for Fund 9 and future funds. So we wanted to bring that up at this meeting just so that you all have time to put something in if that's needed. I don't know if you need it or not. I don't know how V4 will be funded, but that's part of this conversation too, is what are we setting up for V4 and how will it be funded? And if we're not aligning with Fund 9, maybe there isn't an urgency around that. Quasar.
Thank you for bringing that up, Nori. I was going to suggest the same thing, that the admin team not submit things for the circle. So that's a great idea. Also, governance oversight. I'm not quite sure that they can be submitting things for admin or for circle either. I believe that we really need to be responsible in separating some of these things.
Yeah, and that was our concern too, is we want to make sure that there's clear separation between the different groups, because
there's none at all.
Yeah. Steve.
So are we saying that there should be a proposal in Fund 9 for rapid funding general purposes, which include paying admin? Is that the best way to go forward? You know, because I think trying to coordinate all of these different circles to pay y'all what you should get paid is sounds like a clusterfuck to me. You know, so I think there's got to be a separate thing for y'all, and I understand why y'all don't want to ask for it yourself. And I appreciate that, because the last thing I want to see out of this is entrenched bureaucracy. So, but yeah. Nonetheless, that begs the question, how to pay y'all.
Thanks for bringing that up. We are creating our own proposal, and we're rebranding from Circle Admins to Governance Services Guild, where we're offering facilitation and secretarial skills and treasury services to any governance group in Cardano and Catalyst that desires it. And then
So could I ask that you add training, admin training, so that you can replace yourselves?
Yes, so this is a little off topic, but in that proposal, we have a project-based learning section that will talk about how
Okay.
we're going to codify what we do. So anybody in the community can go through the project-based learning and join the guild and be part of this.
And I suppose they could earn some gimbals along the way, right?
Yeah. And our model moving forward will be any group that wants our services will have a fee structure and they can pay for those services to basically hire people that are qualified for scribing or facilitation to do so. But as part of that, we want to take a step back from the circle and the circle proposals to remain a little more neutral there, as well as expanding out and providing these services to others. So that's why we brought this up today, is we really want the circle to take responsibility for its own proposals moving forward.
Is there a category that you're putting those into, Nori?
JP, do you know where we're putting that in?
And,
Yeah,
and
well,
It's in a
it doesn't
category.
really fit anywhere, so we're putting it into dApps products and integrations in an infrastructure type governance
I-
infrastructure.
As
I
a
was-
challenge team rep, I'm going to go against that. I'm on the challenge team. We really don't mean it just for anybody to put stuff in as a, hey, it's not a miscellaneous challenge.
I
Is there some
recommend
kind of
governance challenge, or and actually that should be a submission within the next week for sure, just to have a home for these kinds of things.
There is a governance challenge in there. There's two actually. So George and the governance challenge teams are in conversation to maybe merge the two. So there's not a bunch of competition for that space. So we ensured a governance space. And for the dApps products integrations, we are creating a product here. The primary product is a PBL-based learning system for learning how to be an effective meeting scribe or to facilitate meetings. So that's kind of our angle and why we're putting it into that category.
Wonderful. So we've got former circle reps and former CC admin reps putting in a proposal for a separate company and not supporting circle.
Not a company. It's a community group where anybody can join and take part. We're not for profit whatsoever, but we do exist so people who are passionate about this kind of work can actually be rewarded for doing that for the community.
And within that proposal, we are including that the circle is commissioning the Governance Services Guild to continue the work that we've been doing. So until you guys submit your own proposals and there's a funding line to fund us for the work that we're doing through the Governance Services Guild, in this proposal, it specifically will cover us for a 4-month period to continue supporting the circle in the present capacity.
And the circles voted to commission this. I didn't quite get that part. What did you say?
Well, if we just stop supporting, the circle doesn't have that glue to connect you between meetings, to put in agendas, to take notes, to do the recordings, so on and so forth. So we will continue to provide those services, assuming that you want them.
Right. So we would have to determine the funding source to commission you
So
folks
just-
to be
Yeah, I
involved.
think the circle could take care of itself.
Nori and JP, I'm really this DAO's challenge. I'm wondering what's wrong with that, because I mean, to me, this is all DAO services, and I mean, maybe you don't want to take that label on, but I'd be curious why not. I mean, because we're kind of, I mean, this is basically what governance on Catalyst or governance on Cardano should be. It's basically we want real DAOs, right? So, and that to me seems like a real DAO oriented thing, what you want to do.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That's a good point, Steve. I'll take a look at that challenge and perhaps adjust. The proposal is largely drafted, but it wouldn't be hard to tweak it just for a different challenge. So thanks.
And not to derail this too much, we're just letting you all know that the circle needs to think about rapid funding if that's something that's needed, and the circle needs to think about compensation for the circle if that's needed, and how that's going to happen. But if we're not aligned with Fund 9, then there might not be urgency around it. But just in case there is, just each of the reps may want to drop a proposal in just to see.
Yeah, it's also not realistic to expect the admin team to continue providing services for free. So we do need to get funded if we are going to be here supporting.
And I think your services are very valued and very important. So we should find a way to do that as a circle, in my view.
And then our final agenda item is opening up the circle meetings. And we talked about that last time. Is there general alignment that the next circle meeting will be open to the public as observers? And if so, then we can set that up. If Reese attends, it will still be live streamed, I assume, and other things. But if people want to join live, they can. I think we talked about limiting participation only to chat. And no observers can actually be brought into the meeting because it's a circle meeting, but they can observe and they can participate in chat. Is that still an okay mechanism? And Steve?
Yeah, I'm fine. I have mixed feelings about chats in Zoom calls. You know, like the DREP workshop, the chat in that DREP workshop was so fucking distracting, you know. Yeah. And I don't want to say people shouldn't talk in a chat, but Jesus, you know, like it was hard to focus, and that may just be my own inability to block it out. But you know, I think people should be allowed, if they are going to chat, you know, I think you should bring in an extra admin person just to, you know, keep a finger on the click button.
Yeah. And I will also just say, in a distributed moderation, all the circle members will be co-hosts. So you will all have the ability to do whatever. If people are being disruptive or.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'd rather the people in the meeting could just focus on the meeting and not pay attention to the bloody chat, you know. And I kind of think, you know, can we have a separate chat, you know, for the circle team members, you know, and I don't even think that's possible, you know, but you know, chat is disruptive and can be, in my view.
Yeah, but we can experiment, and if it becomes a problem, we lock it down and only co-hosts are able to chat and speak. I think we have a lot of.
I really think it's only geeks that are going to be here, so you know. But
nobody wants to come to Zoom. Like nobody wants to fill out any more surveys. They don't want to do any polls. They don't want to come to Zoom. You can have these calls on Zoom and stream it to a Discord or to a Twitter. The people in the conversation don't have to see or hear anybody, but other people can see and hear. Some people will join. And I apologize for not raising my hand.
Sure. And Reese is already live streaming to YouTube. If other people want to stream to Twitter and all that, if you're all okay with that, I think that's fine. But just for the experiment here is to allow any observers to hop into the Zoom for whatever reason they want as an observer.
To be honest, I think we have a beautiful community. I don't think that it will be totally wild and that we actually will have to somehow handle wild messes. I think the people who already watch the CC meetings are not so many around, and the people will actually come. So there are not that many. And those who are really engaged to catch up with the stuff, it would be awesome to provide them space to come. Oh, okay, come close already to it. Maybe these are the next people who nominates themselves, because they are close to the topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you and Steve. It'd probably be the governance passionate people that show up. These meetings aren't the most exciting thing in the world, unless you're really passionate.
I'm a little sensitive to it. I was in an early internet chat community that literally got destroyed by one guy with massive hacking skills. And, you know, I think that we're more resilient than 15 years ago, but that happened and it was shocking to me. It was shocking that it could happen, you know, that a guy could do that. And it was shocking that it actually blew the whole thing apart. So I'm just saying, shit happens and there are people who just want to see the world burn. So
Joey, and then we need to wrap up the meeting. We're at time.
Yeah, I just want to jump back to the funding. Are we saying that every single role is going to put in their own proposal? And are we all going to have a common salary range that we're going to be looking for the Circle V4, or it's going to be all over the place? I think, it may cause some conflict if it's all over the place, but we should consider what that role is, the value is there, and come up with some common ground.
Yeah, I think that's part of the conversation on Circle V4. What's its structure? What's its pay? And all that needs to be decided.
Yeah, so bring that to the community, and that would be a perfect question to ask. If we bring legitimacy, right, we're bringing value to the community. How much does that pay? Right? And what is the amount of work that's involved? And that's been sort of part of the discussion. Everyone should have some incentive to be here for sure. People should not work for free, but we need to establish our legitimacy. And if that was in question, which it has been, let's establish that, and then we'll bring value, and then we'll get paid accordingly or incentivized accordingly. It's not compensation. It's not pay, just to be clear.
Yeah, you'll have the tax man coming for you if you start talking about pay. It's a stipend.
An incentive. That's how everything works in Catalyst, is incentives.
Incentives. Excellent. All right. Let's wrap this up for today. So we have 3 action items: reps to poll the community at Town Hall, Twitter Spaces done with Quasar, and then polis surveys. And I will start that doc. We covered the Fund 9 stuff, and if we're not aligning with Fund 9, there might not be a huge urgency to get the proposals in, because we still need to define everything. So it may be a Fund 10 thing, or some other mechanism. So to be discussed. Let's wrap up with final thoughts. So Joy, why don't you give us some closing remarks, and then Felix, where are you at?
I'm good with everything. As long as I can, I'll just stay and continue until someone is voted into the seat, and we'll just take it one day at a time. As long as I don't start looking like that picture of Jack Nicholson, then I'm good.
Thanks. Felix, then Steve.
For the next steps, definitely. Thanks a lot for your time, everybody. And let's be brave. Let's risk things and stuff. But thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Steve. Then Chris.
Yeah, I'm good. I appreciate everybody just letting me walk in this room. So that's cool. I'll do my best to represent to our subcircle. So,
Chris, then Quasar.
Thank you. Yeah, I thought there was this is my 3rd week here, and there's decreasingly less bun throwing, which is great. That's not to say that we have to agree with each other every single moment, but we are beginning to come to I do believe some good next steps and good momentum going forward. And the only other thing I just want to mention is next week I'm here. The next 2 weeks after that, I'm not. I'm on PTO. So making my excuses now.
Thanks, Quasar, and then Harris.
Yeah, this feels like we're getting some things going in the right direction. I'd really like to take this time this week before proposal submission deadlines there to push the legitimacy of the circle and push the proposals. And before this whole thing, my idea behind challenge teams and Challenge Fest would be to do it right now, because if we had people having proposals in ahead of time, we could actually, as a community, review the challenges for next time. I'd also like to ask that we consider the circle's ability to change the cadence of circle voting, circle terms, the challenge team cohort funded proposal, onboarding, yeah, I mean, that's a little bit it. I would like to say, as the general ADA holder, as someone that does have to go through, and this is a really unique situation. I understand the need to audit requests for funding and be able to show that to the community. At the same time, it's there for now. There's ways to spend that money to address everything that we've been talking about. Yeah, I'd like some leniency or you know, trust. If I send something that I'm not trying to run away with, you know, the funds, they will be productive. They will go to people. Most of this conversation would have been prevented if the communities, if the reps, if the treasury and admin had actually been, you know, talking to one another, which is in, you know, one of the main goals of the circle is for the circle to, you know, the different roles to talk to one another. And I'm afraid these very roles is the reason they don't talk to one another. We want to define them. We want to have something that's defined so we can put it there. But that also creates the gap in respect for the other role. And in fact, we're already, all of you original ADA holders, we're, you know, I'm a tool maker and maintainer. I'm a CA, I'm a funded proposer. You know, I'm not a state pool operator yet, but I would love to be. I like being all the roles. You know, this is an amazing thing to experience. So that's it on the phone line.
Thanks, Quasar. And I think we should definitely set up a meeting between you and admin and treasury so we can just discuss the distribution of the general ADA holder funds rather than through email or chat. I think a face-to-face meeting would help solve a lot of these issues.
But the sooner the better. Like, I love you. Thank you. Yeah. I love it. I didn't mean to say I love you.
Love you too. Harris and then JP.
Joey, you raised your hand. Is it something you wanted to interject quickly, or? Just
quickly, I just wanted to make Quasar comfortable with the process of the funding, the rapid funding. In the beginning, we all agreed that we would just use it rationally and just let the circle know how we're spending it, and then you just work with the admin team, the accounting folks, and hook them up with whoever you're going to spend the funds with, and they'll get their wallet address and they'll transfer those funds. So it's not you got to write a whole proposal or any of that type of stuff. At least that's not the way it's been. And I've had the sub-circle folks, they were receiving funds, and as Harris knows, I'm working on this framework for a database. So that's kind of how it's been, Quasar.
Great. No, thank you, Joey. Yeah, just wanted to wrap just by saying, you know, definitely appreciate the conversation. I think we're really going through the process of regrouping, trying to reset, trying to come at it with a different approach. You know, it definitely, you know, encourage all of us to continue to drive toward that evolution of what the circle is, because I think it has brought real value to the community. So, you know, definitely appreciate everyone's time in being here. Tremendously value the admins, the support and facilitation and making things happen. And I hope we can find a way to ensure that, you know, those, you know, your valued contributions have incentives, and to make sure that we can establish sort of the right incentives for the circle members as well. And we have some ideas on how to do that, but, you know, I think it's important for us to sit back, bring legitimacy by listening to the community. And then that will help us refocus with some power behind us instead of us just making stuff up. So definitely appreciate everyone's time. So thank you.
Thanks, Harris. JP.
Yeah, just I guess through this conversation, just reflecting that, you know, we're all here, as Nadi said, with good intentions for the most part and for the right reasons. And I'd really like everybody here to get away from the us versus them mentality that has plagued this, specifically this version of the circle. of my group versus your group. We're all groups and part of the community. We're all part of Catalyst, and we're all here to work together. So maybe approaching it as a collaborative effort rather than a me versus you, and your success means my loss, because it's not a zero-sum game. So.
Thanks, JP. Yeah, and I appreciate everybody here working together and trying to come together. I think we seem to work well together when we have time to listen to each other and see each other as human beings and stop othering and work together, you know, and we have common objectives and we all have passion, and I love the passion. And I love that everyone's coming together to work on these problems. So I thank each and every one of you for participating, because I know the circle's in kind of a gray state, unfunded, and there's questions on legitimacy and all of that. So working towards repairing that, opening up the conversation to the community, getting input and re-envisioning this thing, I think are really healthy steps. So I'm super excited that that's happening. And I just also want to mention, as Chris said, I will be available for the next working session, but I will be driving across Canada for the entire month of July. So I'm going to be offline for 30 days. After that, working with the admin team to how we continue to facilitate and make things happen. But I will be away until August after our next meeting.
Are you not going to join town hall then?
Probably not. Yeah.
I reckon it's going to get to that time and you'd be like, no, I can't do it.
We'll see.
Yeah, there may be many of us away, so we might consider looking at schedules for a potential, break as well.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to force it.
Yeah, that would be welcome.
Okay.
UK Parliament has a recess roundabout now.
Yeah.
All right. All right. I got to run. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Really good to see you all. Great job today.
Quasar, did you have some final words?
I did. We can forego it. That's fine.
Oh, that's all right. I've got, if you want to say something, say something.
Are the circle, each individual rep or the groups allowed to talk to one another outside of these meetings and have collective group meetings?
Encouraged, actually.
Yeah, it's encouraged.
Yes. It's to explore the highest potential of human collaboration, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when are those meetings happening?
They are, you create them. You reach out and say, hey, let's meet. And if you need admin team to help facilitate, let us know. But it's really just connect. Do it. Yeah.
Harris would love it if you checked in with him first. I mean, I know Harris would love that.
Let's all collaborate. We'll see you guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank